After the tears and screams, after the rivers ran red with blood, fields of bones were left behind, buried in silence, swallowed by sand and stone. The butcher of Baghdad, Hulagu Khan, grandson of the great Genghis, has torn through this ancient land like a plague of iron and fire. His eyes, cold and merciless, now fix upon Syria. The cities tremble at the mere whisper of his name. The Sultan of Aleppo and Damascus, Al-Nasir Yusuf, has failed to go to Hulagu and the Mongols in submission. He has refused to bow his neck. He has refused to kiss the dust before the conqueror's feet. And so now, Mongol envoys ride to him bearing a warning wrapped in silken steel. They arrive at his court with words carved from ice: destroy your fortresses, raze your walls to rubble, submit to the great Khan in the east, or suffer his wrath. The earth will drink your blood, your children will curse your name as they die. Some in the Sultan's court, men whose spines have turned to water, favor surrender. They counsel peace, negotiation, tribute. But Al-Nasir Yusuf believes differently. He believes his cities, ancient and mighty, can weather any siege. Stone walls built by generations, he reasons, cannot fall so easily. One commander stands apart from the rest. His name is Baibars. One of his eyes is silvered by a cataract, clouded like a storm sky, but the other burns with clarity and terrible foresight. This hardened warrior from Egypt, forged in battle and tempered by betrayal, beseeches the Sultan to rally his armies, to meet the Mongols in the field, in open combat, before the walls become tombs. Walls, Baibars warns, his voice low and grave, will not avail against the Mongols. They do not break against stone, they devour it. The Sultan disregards him. He waves away the council as if swatting at a fly. And so Baibars, seeing the writing on the wall clearer than any scribe, gathers his most loyal followers and leaves Syria behind. He abandons it to its doom. He will not watch brave men die for a fool's hope. Death arrives in early 1260. The Mongols breach the walls of Aleppo within a week. Stone that stood for centuries crumbles like dried clay. From the high citadel, the defenders are forced to watch, helpless, horror-stricken, as their people are massacred in the streets below. Mothers clutching children, old men cut down as they flee, the air thick with smoke and screaming. The garrison holds out for weeks before surrendering, their water gone, their hope extinguished. Another fortress in the region also relinquishes the fight, its banners lowered in defeat. And it is written, they came down under amnesty, believing in the Khan's word. But Hulagu Khan was extremely angry with them. He ordered them killed at once, men, women, and children alike. None were spared. Al-Nasir has fled. The Sultan who refused to bow has run like a rabbit before wolves. Damascus, the jewel of Syria, surrenders without resistance. The gates swing open. No swords are drawn. The city submits. Mongol-appointed administrators promptly establish control over Syrian cities, their rule swift and absolute, thereby uprooting the last remnants of the Ayyubid dynasty, a lineage that once seemed eternal, now scattered like dust in the wind. Only a decade before, the Islamic Ayyubids had triumphed over the Crusaders in the ongoing war for the Holy Land. They had captured and held for ransom the French King Louis IX himself, the Lion of France brought low and chained. Amidst the glow of that victory, the Ayyubids were ousted from Egypt, overthrown not by foreign invaders, but by their own elite slave soldiers, called the Mamluks, who in turn set about fighting amongst each other for power like wolves over a carcass. Baibars himself, a distinguished Mamluk, a warrior of fearsome reputation, had fled for his life as his rivals seized control of Egypt. Blood had been spilled, alliances shattered, trust became a luxury no man could afford. Now he returns, not as a fugitive, but as a supplicant. He comes to make peace with his nemesis, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, Qutuz. If the winds of war are brewing on the horizon, if the storm from the east is coming, Baibars will not flee again. Not this time. He has run enough. the boy. He and his tribe, native to the western steppe, once fled the swords of invaders and found refuge on the Crimean Peninsula. They thought themselves safe. They were not. His people were attacked by a regional warlord, a petty king drunk on ambition. Many were killed. The survivors were sold. Baibars was sold into slavery. He was brought to Egypt in chains, a boy torn from everything he knew. But he was not broken. He was sharpened. Raised to fight as a Mamluk, honed into a weapon, trained to kill with precision and without mercy. The invaders who had displaced his people so long ago, who had scattered his tribe like leaves before a gale, were the Mongols. The same Mongols who now stand at Egypt's doorstep. And now, envoys arrive in Cairo with a message from Hulagu Khan. The words are read aloud in the Sultan's court, and they chill the blood of every man who hears them. From the King of Kings of East and West, the Supreme Khan, let Qutuz know that we are the soldiers of God on earth, that he created us in his anger to be his scourge upon the wicked. Commit your faith to us before the veil is torn. Submit or be destroyed. We will not be touched by tears. We will not be swayed by pleas. You have heard that we have purified the earth of the disorders which defiled it. You have heard that we have slaughtered most of the inhabitants wherever we have passed. It is up to you to flee, but what land will offer you refuge? Which road can save you from our reach? Your prayers to God against us will not be heeded. Hurry to give us an answer before the flames of war are ignited and its sparks are cast upon you. The envoy continues, voice trembling, or perhaps savoring the dread his words inspire. Say to Egypt, Hulagu has come with swords unsheathed and sharp. The mightiest of her people will become humble before him. He will send their children to join the aged in death. The Nile will run red. The pyramids will stand witness to your ruin. Silence falls over the court like a shroud. Then Qutuz rises. His face is stone, his decision made. He has the 4 Mongol envoys publicly cut in half, cleaved from crown to groin in the center of the square, their blood pooling in the dust. He orders their heads hung from Bab Zuwayla, the southern gate of Cairo, for all to see. A message in flesh and bone, we do not fear you. And then the army rides out for war. Hulagu has moved to cooler pastures in the north with the main army. The recent death of the great Khan, Manka, has diverted his attention from the front. Succession disputes rage across the Mongol Empire. Hulagu cannot afford to be far from the center of power. He has left only around 10,000 Mongols in the region, under the command of his general, Kitbuka, a Christian, a Nestorian, fierce and loyal. They are camped across Palestine, the land held holy by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. The Mongols have pillaged it carelessly and made little effort to establish lasting control. It is a land between, a threshold. Word of the Mamluk advance reaches Kitbuka, and he rallies his warriors. Drums beat, horses stamp, steel is sharpened. Qutuz and the Muslim Mamluk army, meanwhile, make camp outside the crusader city of Acre. Avowed adversaries of Islam, some Christians, the Georgians, Armenians, and more recently the ruler of Antioch and Tripoli, have submitted and taken to fighting alongside their Mongol overlords. Kitbuka himself is a Christian. The faith means little to him compared to loyalty to the Khan, but the Franks here in Acre refuse to throw in their lot with the ruthless Mongols. They have seen what submission means. They have heard the screams. The Crusaders send out supplies to the Mamluks, a stifled, cautious show of support. An enemy's enemy, perhaps, is a reluctant friend. Riding ahead, Baibars locates the Mongol force not far from a spring called Ain Jalut, the Spring of Goliath. As twilight gives way to dawn over the hills of southeastern Galilee, the Mamluk army beholds the Mongols arrayed for battle. Free troops, Bedouins and Syrians conscripted or coerced, stand among them. But the core Mamluks are something else entirely. Men who were sold as boys, raised in Islam and relentlessly drilled to be professional warriors. Adept in horse archery and melee, often clad in mail and lamellar armor, their horses similarly protected. They are not peasants with spears. They are killers. Across the plain, Mongol heavy troops menace in elaborate armor, either native to Mongolia or pillaged along the warpath from 100 conquered cities. Standard Mongol warriors ride light, with little to no armor. They have known horsemanship, archery, and war since infancy. Personal reserve horses grant them inexhaustible mobility on the battlefield. They are the wind. They are death on hooves. First blood is drawn by the Mongols. Heavy cavalry smashes into the Mamluk line like a hammer against an anvil, followed by a terrible, blinding burst of arrows, thousands released in unison, darkening the sky. Mamluks fall all around, horses scream, men clutch at arrows buried in their throats. Qutuz feels the fear rippling through his men like a cold current. He shouts for them to hold position. Fight for Islam. Fight for your wives and children. Stand or die as cowards. He calls for a charge of their own, a thunderous, desperate countersurge. In the course of battle, the Ayyubid prince serving on the Mongol left, whose loyalty was always fragile, deserts with his troops. The Mamluks likely swarm this open edge, pouring through the gap like floodwater through a broken dam. The Mongol horde becomes entrenched in a bloody, grinding melee. Warriors in the eye of the storm tear each other apart, with swords, axes, and spears. Horse archers exchange kills on the edges, circling like hawks. Blood soaks the earth. The screams of men and horses blend into a single terrible roar. At length, the Mongols begin to crumble. Discipline fractures. Fear, unfamiliar, alien, creeps in. Some leap from their mounts for a last stand, backs against one another, snarling defiance even as they are overwhelmed. General Kitbuka is overrun. His head is taken as a trophy by Qutuz, held aloft before the army. A cheer erupts, raw, primal, disbelieving. Baibars hunts the remaining fleeing Mongols and slaughters many in the hills. When the Mamluks find Mongols hiding in a field of reeds, trying to disappear into the earth itself, they set the field on fire. The screams carry for miles. Word of the defeat at Ain Jalut echoes across the land like a thunderclap. Mongols abandon conquered cities. The Mamluks overtake them, reclaiming what was lost. The impossible has happened. The Mongols have been beaten. The myth of their invincibility lies shattered like broken pottery. Qutuz then rides south to return to Egypt. He had deposed the previous sultan and taken the throne less than a year prior, seizing power through blood and cunning. Before then, his allies had slain the companions of Baibars, an account overseen by Baibars himself, who watched and did nothing, who bided his time. A chronicler recounts the journey home. Baibars had already made arrangements with a small group of his followers, riding beside Qutuz, talking with him as if nothing were amiss. He suddenly seized the Sultan's hand. Qutuz looked at him, confused, perhaps even smiling. Baibars drew his sword. He struck. The result was Qutuz's death and removal, as had been decreed by God. Baibars does not mourn. He does not hesitate. Touting his victory at Ain Jalut, proclaiming his triumph over both Mongol and Sultan, Baibars receives the support of Egyptian commanders. He becomes the Sultan of Egypt, the former slave, the boy sold in chains, now a king. Hulagu Khan does not consider Ain Jalut a crushing defeat, but a prelude to vengeance. His massive army remains untouched and eager for battle. But animosities have grown between Hulagu and another Mongol prince to his north, Berk Khan. Disputes over sovereignty and land have been further inflamed by Berk's prior conversion to Islam and his consequent desire to punish Hulagu for the massacre of Baghdad and the murder of its caliph. The blood of the faithful cries out. The empire has begun to fracture into distinct khanates, each ruled by a rival prince. A Mongol civil war to establish a new great Khan rages on in the distant east. And now war erupts between Hulagu and Berk, Mongol against Mongol, brother against brother in all but name. When Baibars learns of this, he shrewdly forges an alliance with his fellow Muslim, Berk, and his golden horde Khanate. Berk permits the ongoing slave trade from his lands to Egypt, a trade which serves as the lifeblood of the Mamluk army. Fresh boys, fresh warriors, an endless supply. Engaged on two fronts, Hulagu seeks his own allies. In a letter to King Louis IX of France, the Mongol prince boasts that he massacred Baghdad and Aleppo, that he captured al-Nasir Yusuf and, suspicious of the man's loyalty, had his head stuck atop a gate to feed the crows. These attempts at European-Mongol alliances survive Hulagu's death in 1265. His son, Abaka, succeeds him as head of the Ilkhanate. He marries the illegitimate daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Michael VIII, an alliance of convenience, fragile as glass. Later, Abaka threatens Baibars, reminding the former slave, "You are a Mamluk who was bought in Sivas. How do you dare rebel against the kings of the earth?" The insult stings, but Baibars does not reply with words. When Lord Edward of England leads a crusade in 1271, Abaka answers his call for aid. He sends 10,000 Mongols to pillage Syria, a gesture of alliance, a promise of cooperation. Yet Crusader Mongol efforts toward alliance rarely amount to effective coordination. They are awkward partners, mistrustful, divided by faith and ambition. Baibars emerges with his army to find the Mongols have already returned north. He clashes with the Crusaders instead, and by some accounts, he sends into Edward's camp an assassin, a Nizari agent silent and deadly, to kill the future king of England. The agent stabs Edward, possibly with a poisoned dagger. Edward kills the assailant, but the wound festers. He decides to abandon the crusade and return home. Such are the means of survival in a web of Islamic, Christian, and Mongol interests, complicated by internecine divisions and betrayals that shift like desert sand. The Mongol promise of revenge still looms on the horizon like a gathering storm. In 1277, nearly 2 decades after the fateful battle at Ain Jalut, Baibars musters the Mamluk army once more and takes up his sword. The Sultan's visage betrays long years of war. Scars crisscross his weathered face. The clouded eye stares sightlessly. The journey north feels more labored than it once did, every step heavier, every breath harder. He is not the young warrior he was, but he is not finished. Trekking through sand and mountains, the Mamluk army stops to camp in the moonlit hills near Elbistan, Mongol territory. The night is cold. Fires flicker like dying stars. The Mongols gather in a nearby valley, shadows against shadows, and when dawn breaks, they inaugurate the day of battle with a vengeful onslaught. The Mamluk left cracks under the assault. Men fall, mangled by arrows, trampled by horses. Panic spreads. Baibars hastens to reinforce the flank, his voice rising above the chaos. Hold the line, for God, for Egypt. He shouts for a counterattack. The Mamluks surge forward, a wave of steel and fury. The Mongols cannot stem the tide. The Mamluks cover them in blades and arrows, cutting them down like wheat before the scythe. The tapestry of Mongol dead spreads thick over the whole plain. Following the battle, the elation of victory mingles with the Islamic holiday of Eid, a time of celebration. But Baibars forbids his men to play celebratory drums. His face is grim. When asked why, he laments, "How can I rejoice? I had believed that if 10,000 horsemen of my army were to meet 30,000 Mongols, I would defeat them. But today I met 7,000 Mongols with all my army, and they aroused panic. My army lost heart. Without Allah's grace, they would have defeated us." He knows the truth. The victory was close, too close. Baibars dies later that year. Some say from illness, others from poison. The slave who became sultan, the warrior who held the line, passes into legend. Ain Jalut represented a halt to the Mongol advance. Yes, but it had been the cunning Baibars who held the line thereafter and built a fearsome Mamluk army capable of standing against the storm. 4 years after his death, a massive Mongol army invades Syria once more, and the Mamluks vanquish them. Again and again they repel the invaders. Notwithstanding one major defeat in 1299, the Mamluks continued to thwart further Mongol conquest in the region. The Mongols engaged many worthy opponents on the remote edges of their empire: the Knights of Europe, the Samurai of Japan, the Mamluks of Egypt. But even costly offensives, even rivers of blood, did not break the Mongol horde. The greatest enemies, the ultimate undoing of the Mongol Empire, are the Mongols themselves. Inward, the very avarice, brutality, and claims to power that built the empire turned the Khans against each other. Brother against brother, Khanate against Khanate. The vision of unending conquests, dreamed by the long-dead Genghis Khan, fades like smoke on the wind. Years ago, in the midst of his civil war against Hulagu, Berk Khan wandered through cold heaps of Mongol, dead on a blood-soaked battlefield. He looked upon the bodies, warriors who might have conquered the world together, and lamented, "Mongols are killed by Mongol swords. If we were united, then we would have conquered all of the world." But they were not united, and the world did not fall.